I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Leaks-May.
Here.
Councilmember Martin.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Polika.
Here.
Councilmember Piana.
Here.
And Mayor Coulter.
Here, thank you. And we have a quorum this evening. Next item of business would be the approval of the agenda. What's council's pleasure on the agenda this evening?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to approve the agenda with one change to 7B. I would like to move that to 7E.
All right. Any other changes to the agenda? If not, was that a motion?
That is a motion. I said,
Yep.
yes.
Is there support?
Support.
All right, any discussion? Marnie, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Martin.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Polika.
Yes.
Councilmember Piana.
Yes.
Councilmember Leaks-May.
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. The agenda is adopted.
Through the chair, before you proceed,
Yes.
I just wanted to let people know that I need to depart early to catch a flight, so we'll be leaving at 8:45. Don't know what will happen first, if we'll end before then or if I have to leave by then.
All right,
Since this is a previously rescheduled city council meeting,
It
this
is.
was a flight that I had to take already planned, so.
yep. Very good, thank you. So noted. So the next item of business would be presentations, and it looks like we have one presentation this evening, which is our DDA. And is that Barry Hicks, our Executive Director? Or are you tag teaming with Cindy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Just wanted to come talk to you a little bit tonight about some of the promotions that we're doing and working on with our businesses. As you're well aware, and I know there's some stuff on the agenda later, talking about parking, and we've talked a lot about the development on Troy and how this impacts businesses. So the DDA has been working with them to try to come up with different monthly promotions. And a lot of that credit goes to our promotions committee and to our deputy director, Cindy Wilcock, that I'm going to turn this over to. And she's going to talk to you about what the programming is for now and how we release these things quarterly and how we're working with people.
Excellent. Good evening.
Good evening. Like Barry said, we know that we're entering kind of a challenging time in our downtown for our downtown businesses and visitors. But we have a promotions committee that's made up of some really outstanding volunteers, business owners, employees, and residents that really care about helping these businesses sustain through this construction project and even beyond that. So I just want to give a huge shout out to our promotions committee, Michelle, JoBeth, PJ, Tim, I'm going to forget somebody, Jackie, Patrick, Wendy. These guys really have a lot of great ideas and really put in a lot of hard work and really care about helping this downtown. So we can't do what we do without volunteers, so I just want to make sure that everybody knows how wonderful they are. So that being said, we want to make sure that downtown Ferndale and the businesses stay in the forefront of everybody's mind as the place to be still, because there's always something happening. So we have launched a campaign, or are launching a campaign, called Discover Downtown, to encourage people to discover something new, discover something old, but to continue to work and discover their downtown. And it's a year-long campaign, and each month is assigned one of our different business sectors. We know we have great restaurants, we know we have great retail, but we also have a lot of great health and wellness businesses. We also have a lot of places where you can get pampered, get your hair done. We have some great theater. So we really want to spend each month focusing on one of those business sectors with still opportunities for other businesses to be involved, and not only to be involved, but to support each other through this. So part of this campaign is quarterly we will be announcing in more detail what's happening that quarter. But we'll have posters out that will feature the theme for each month for the entire year so that people know what's coming up and they even know what they missed so that they can see the kind of businesses we have. So January was a little slow and it was kind of our gain speed month, but we were focused more on music in the downtown. But now that it's February, February is retail month. We know that retailers can struggle a little bit this time of year. People don't want to shop. They're getting all their Christmas bills in. So for the past couple of years, we have done the indoor sidewalk sale at the end of the month. So we're really going to use that to cap off and end the month with a bang. But we have a lot of fun things planned that'll focus around our retail coming up. So make sure you check it out and check out our website. March, we will be bringing back Restaurant Week. We've taken a couple of years off from that, but we really want to celebrate it. We're partnering with Pulp Detroit, who's a local firm who does a lot of events, and they also do a lot of work with the restaurants and bars in this town. So they can really help us elevate the promotions and advertising of this event to the next level. But beyond just Restaurant Week, we've got some other fun planned with restaurants. We're talking about a March Madness style Munchie Madness event where we will help have a bracket style competition for appetizers in town to get people kind of out and about and choosing their, we'll have playoffs and see who the favorite appetizer is. So, and then moving forward, we're going to have a month focused on pampering and beauty and have kind of a hair competition to cap that off. Health and wellness, besides the National Bike Month and Downtown Bike Rodeo. We're also planning on doing, instead of a pub crawl, we're going to do a fitness crawl. And then moving forward into the summer, we've got a lot of great things planned, and you'll just have to I won't go through all the months with you. And we've also got some ongoing promotions that'll keep building. I know last time Barry was here, he talked a little bit about our Wednesday Walk campaign. Wednesday walks are designed just to get people out and about and walking in the downtown and discovering new things and really highlighting the walkability and the connectivity of their downtown, while maybe seeing something different from the street level. So those leave every Wednesday unless the weather's super, super cold like it was last week or really rainy. But we don't let the weather stop us too much. We leave at 5:30 on Wednesday evenings from the parking lot out here, and we walk for about half hour to 45 minutes. And sometimes there's fun surprises along the way. Our first walk featured some bagpipes and drums, so that was cool. I can't promise that every week, but it's a great group of people. It's a great way to get to know some of your neighbors and some business owners. So that's about it, really. We'll be launching all sorts of different media things and things for people to see popping up around town to keep it interesting, keep your walks interesting, and really keep people engaged.
Great. Anyone have any questions for Cindy?
I do, through the chair. Regarding the Wednesday walks, now, I would love to do that, but 5:30 is just really tight for me. So if there's a plan for one later in the future, I'd be happy to join.
Yeah, and I think definitely as the weather gets nicer and the days get a little bit longer,
Right.
we can look at pushing that back.
Okay.
The thought kind of was when we started them, because everybody or most everybody makes some kind of resolution to get a little healthier and move a little bit more. And it's so hard to do when it's cold and dark that you drive home from work and you get home and you don't want to leave. So we thought if it's right after work, if you're stopping right on the way, you're more likely to do it, which is why we picked 5:30. But we'll definitely, especially as the days get a little longer, look into moving that.
Okay.
Or you can always text us and we can tell you where you are and you can join up halfway through.
All right.
Thanks, Cindy.
Yep,
Appreciate
thank you.
it. All right. So our next item of business would be call to audience, and that's your opportunity, if you've come to visit us here in person at City Hall, to address council on any item that's not on the agenda. Let me stress that, not on the agenda, because when we get to that portion of the agenda, you'll have an opportunity to speak to those items. But if there's something else that you want to talk to us about, anything else you want to talk to us about that's not on our agenda this evening, just come up to the podium, give us your name and address, and 3 minutes is yours to share your thoughts. No one for call to audience, all right? Then we'll move on, and we'll go to the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are those items that council considers routine, and we enact in one motion unless council removes something from the consent agenda. So let me read that consent agenda now. Item A is the approval of the special meeting minutes of the January 9, 2019, and regular meeting minutes of January 14, 2019 meetings. Item B is the approval of the changes to the 1988 Class C and club liquor licenses as recommended in the attached resolution.
Item C is the approval of the recruiting firm selection for the city manager position. Item D is the approval of an amendment to the agreement between the City of Ferndale and Republic Parking for parking management services, funds to be paid for from the auto parking fund account as noted. Item E is the approval of the interlocal agreement between Ferndale Downtown Development Authority and the City of Ferndale as submitted by our Assistant City Manager. Item F is the approval of the SMART third-party agreement in the amount of $14,591 as recommended by the Parks and Rec Director. Item G is the approval of a purchase order to Ajax Material Corporation for cold patch in the amount of $15,000, and that the expense be charged to the Major Streets Surface Maintenance Repair and Maintenance account as noted, and the Local Streets Surface Maintenance Streets Repair and Maintenance account also as noted. Item H is the approval of the purchase and installation of the surveillance solution DA Central in the amount of $19,975 from the account noted in your packet. Item I is the approval of the employee separation agreement as submitted by the HR Director. Item J is the approval of the purchase of the Polaris Ranger UTV from Polaris Sales, Inc. for $23,509.10 to be charged to the Public Improvement Capital Outlay account. And finally, item K is the approval of the bills and payroll as submitted by the City Manager's Office and subject to the review by the Council Finance Committee. What is Council's pleasure on the consent agenda this evening?
I'll move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Moved by Martin and supported by Leaks May. Now, any discussion, either by anyone here in the audience or council? All right, seeing none. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll on the consent agenda, please?
Councilman Polaka?
Yes.
Councilmember Piana?
Yes.
Councilmember Leaks May?
Yes.
Councilmember Martin?
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. The consent agenda is adopted. Moving on now to the regular agenda, item A is a consideration of the resolution to adjust the parking fee schedule. And Assistant City Manager Joe Gaucho is going to make that presentation.
Yes, County Mayor and Council and public. This is really a capstone evening for the Development on Troy project. There's a number of agenda items. They're all relatively interconnected, so we're going to start with the first one, which is a discussion about the parking system analysis and some rate recommendations. So I'd briefly give an overview just on the DOT. I know I do this frequently, but let's just revisit this. The DOT consists of multiple public improvements. They're going to cost an estimated $20 million. Those public improvements include 400 parking spaces. That replaces the existing 138 spaces on the West Troy lot. It includes a redesign of West Troy streetscape, the accommodation of future possible street-level commercial space, and multiple sustainability features. Just a few that are noteworthy would be the living wall that is going to be planned for the alley, some alley improvements that include underground stormwater detention, which is really kind of a capstone piece of the project as well, and LED lighting. So there's a lot of other sustainability elements that are included, but those are just a few of the important ones of note. And then we're also looking, because this is mixed use, to encourage private development and private investment in the downtown, specifically 20,000 square feet of Class A office space. It would be the city's first elevated office space and first office space with square footage of note in the downtown. And one of the goals there was to help support economic resilience in the downtown, so to add some daytime jobs and daytime foot traffic to help load balance the current parking system, which is flooded with nighttime demand. And then again, 15,000 square feet of commercial retail. We heard from residents and focus groups that retail should honor Ferndale's small business character, and that's part of our negotiations right now, is to make sure that we do honor that. And then a possible phase 2 of the project would include a small little residential component on the Allen Street border of the site that could fit up to 12 to 20 residential units, depending on the mix of the units. The developer that we're currently in negotiations with hasn't really addressed that yet, but that could be a possible phase 2. Their first focus is on the office and the commercial street level retail. So a couple guiding principles that we've had when we looked at funding this project. We knew that we estimated, that we would issue up to $20 million of capital improvement bonds to pay for it, and that what would repay that debt service annually would be parking rates. So one of the goals, the guiding principle really is protecting the general fund. That means we did not want to have the community tax base be responsible for this debt service, that the parking system should be able to make its own debt service. And our early calculations indicated that it could. And so as the project evolved, you have annual debt service numbers harden. And right now, the annual debt service looks like about $1.2 million per year to service that $20 million. And again, the third piece of that circle is making sure the parking fund proceeds guarantee that bond payment, right? So as we've evolved through the project, we wanted to do a study of the system, and we reached out to WGI, who is very prevalent with parking rate studies, and they studied parking meter rates across Michigan, specifically also in the downtown metro area, as well as enforcement hours and parking structure rates. So I'm about to talk a little bit about that process. And there's three really points to that. There's the actual rate study and the recommendations that are coming with it, the timing implications of when to look at those rate adjustments, and how that's connected to the debt service payment that I just gave an overview of. So number one, the parking rate study, we looked at several municipalities and some key items of note. The average Metro Detroit area parking rate for a paid system, comparable to ours, is $1.15 an hour. We're currently at 50 cents an hour. So we're well below currently the average meter rate within the metro area. And so we looked at three different options, 75 cents, $1, and $1.25 in those options. And our recommendation, which is below, would be to increase the rates to $1 an hour. What that does is, based on our pro forma projections, our project projections, with that rate increase, the system does sustain all of its operations payments and the debt service. So that goal one is achieved. We protect the general fund. And the common thread there with all of these cities is that each of these cities ended up increasing parking rates as a result of investment in the parking system. So that is a common thread. When you look at all these rates that are $1 above, each of these systems or cities has comparable infrastructure investments, right? So they all, at some point, took out loans to build a deck to grow the system. Number two, a parking enforcement study, again, looking at the array of cities. It's really the same cities. The table didn't carry over. What we looked at is what are our local neighbors doing around enforcement hours, and really the themes around enforcement hours and choosing your enforcement hours is that all of these cities enforce the peak hours based on the demands of their respective towns, so based on the makeup of their downtowns. So university towns could afford to enforce during the day to accommodate student and business for the universities, and on street at night they push their revenues to the deck. Royal Oak, for example, to our north, enforces till midnight. They really enforce around the later hours. Birmingham enforces, I believe, till 9, and their hours are earlier in the morning because they have a lot of office, right? So you're enforcing based on the character of your downtown makeup. So for our city, knowing that we're looking to bring in elevated office and we're trying to load balance our current late night traffic, we thought we can give an hour in the morning and still capture the majority of that office traffic. So right now we currently enforce from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. We're suggesting we cut that morning hour and move it to 11 a.m., which is a benefit for some of the early morning businesses. And our suggestion is to extend the current enforcement hour, which is capped at 9 p.m., and move that to midnight, which is our system studies showed that our system is still quite busy till about 11 p.m. And a lot of that traffic, that late night traffic, causes some extra demands out of the city, out of the parking lot system. So it's our recommendation to extend that to midnight, but move the morning hour 1 hour to 11. And then number three, really, what does all this mean about, in concern with the debt service, and how does this all fit in with the project scheme? So I listed some important items on the right, and really the first important thing is the first debt service payment begins during construction. So our construction parking rates are already lower due to the construction, the loss of West Troy. lot, and meanwhile, your first payment is projected to be this October while we're still building it. So that's an added expense of about $1 million in the first year while we're under construction. So we need to, right now, we don't have any new revenues. We need to inject new revenues in there to accommodate for that new expense piece in the first year. A couple other factors of note. One is for a new parking deck to actually realize its full capacity revenue. It takes about 2 to 3 years to ramp up to that. The first year is lower utilization, but as the deck becomes known and becomes to be a landmark for out-of-town guests to go to the park, then you end up realizing your kind of peak occupancy for the deck by the 3rd year. So it takes a while to get that revenue opportunity from the deck to actually get introduced on the budget line. Our initial thought behind the early operating deficits that the system would accumulate during construction was to use our existing cash reserves in the parking system to offset those deficits. However, as the project got closer and we got real numbers, we began to get real feedback from the market, the bond market that we're looking for. And some of the feedback that we got introduced a couple different items that we hadn't known about. So the market views investing into a parking structure differently than it does for critical infrastructure like roads and water, because people will always need roads and water, and public parking is just a little bit more of a risky investment for a public municipality to undertake. So they'd like a little extra security. And so early operating deficits that we would have otherwise absorbed with our cash reserves would be accumulated and removed from our cash reserves and put aside into an escrow account. And the market would ask for that to guarantee the payment on the debt service because they're skeptical on more skeptical on public parking projects in terms of investment. So I kind of outlined what that looks like from left to right. So our existing cash reserves right now, as of the audit, the last financial audit, was $1.5 million. Any operating deficits that the system realizes during the construction phase would deplete the cash reserves. And then the market, in order to actually issue us the bonds, are going to secure the total amount of those deficits and take them out of our cash reserves, which really just puts us in a risky operating position. So in response to that, we arrived at the timing recommendations. So to summarize our current adjustment recommendation, I want to clarify some of the information out there before I get on to the timing. The hourly rate recommendation is $1 per hour. The parking enforcement hours are 11 a.m. to midnight. The downtown employee permit value is remaining the same. We're recommending not to touch that. So that is still $20 per month, and that is the lowest rate for employee permits in the metro system. The other note that I point out is that the increase to $1 per hour still makes us tied for the lowest comparable on-street parking rate with Pontiac and Rochester in the metro area. So we're just kind of with those other cities. Right now, we're well below all those other cities. So the most preferred option would be to increase rates in April 2019. You see, I have 3 boxes and kind of 3 different scenarios here and the impacts of those scenarios. So if rates are increased this spring, we're able to offset any operating deficits during construction, and those rate increases collectively mitigate any escrow requirements. So we get to keep our cash reserves for the parking fund, which is a good thing. The second preference would be if there was a delay towards the summer, July 1st, 2020, you're going to have about $200,000 in operating deficits. And so the market views that $200,000 as saying we need a security to guarantee the bond payment. So we're going to take 125% of that and apply that to escrow. So you can see escrow would be $225,000. You deduct that collectively, that's a total of $400,000. If you're with me, that's $225,000 for escrow, plus you actually did realize $200,000 in operating losses. So take that off your cash reserves, and that dips you down to about $1 million. And then the least preferred, which puts us into negatives, would be to delay till after the completion of the construction, and that really is kind of a domino effect. If you go into operating deficits with just 50-cent rates, trying to pay for new debt service on top of the maintenance of the entire system, that introduces $1 million deficit. Escrow requirement, $1.25 million. Your cash reserves then go negative the following year. What happens when your cash reserves go negative? That means you're exposing yourself to the general fund because we need to secure the payment on the debt service if we take out a loan. So to summarize, from left to, we protect the general fund. We mitigate early deficits by increasing revenues earlier than later. And by doing that, we also mitigate the escrow requirements. We preserve the cash reserves for the auto parking system, which then in turn delivers on the promise of the parking system paying for itself. And that's kind of the circle of life right there. We did take this to the DDA board in January, and the DDA board supported the rate increase based on this information and the recommendation. They also supported warm weather rate increases, so we had taken that into consideration with this recommendation as well. There's a resolution of support attached to the packet from the DDA as well. So why a rate increase? The intention has always been to fund the debt through the parking system. A $20 million investment means there's going to be new expenses, and we have to have new revenues to offset those new expenses. That expense looks like about $1.2 million a year in debt service, coming from the parking system, not the tax base. And then the question of why now? Why now is really in response to that feedback we got from the market, right? So our initial strategy to absorb some early deficits with our existing cash reserves, which we do have, were mitigated by the feedback from the market who said those early deficits are going to be treated as an escrow requirement, and we're going to take that out of your cash reserves. And that's really what the adjustment had. We received that around the holidays in December, and this is just a course correction recommendation for us. The other important piece is that in order for us to issue a bond, City Council has to pass a public resolution on rates, declaring rates, just what they are and when they go, as part of the bond issuance process. So that is also why it's on a litany of other parking-related items tonight. That's why it's all together. Some lessons learned, certainly opportunities for improvement around communications. Though we did get some new information a little bit later around the holiday, as I said, which altered us to adjust our rate strategy for debt service. We did present this to the DDA on January 10th, and looking backward, we certainly could have messaged that and put that out there, right? And just gone above and beyond the process, which I think I would say we did not go above and beyond the process. Lessons in terms of the finance world, some good lessons is that not all bonds are equal, and so not all public investments are viewed equally by the market. The market views water infrastructure bonds to pay for water or vital critical services more favorably than it does for things like public parking. So that's one thing we learned, and as a result of that, they like some extra security, and that manifests itself as escrow, despite the city's great credit rating, which is AA-. So summary of next steps, we are here tonight considering these issues for City Council. Construction is underway. We had a groundbreaking on February 2nd. So we have some initial just demolition, site mobilization going on right now. But what this looks like, the next steps after this meeting would be to issue the bonds in February. We lost connection. We, of course, immediately would proactively work with the DDA and the business community around communications and adjustments to see how we can support them. And then the parking adjustments would be taken into effect in April 2019 per this recommendation. And that's the presentation. I hope that was helpful and open for discussion.
So at this point, before council has an opportunity to ask questions or make comments, I'm just going to guess that there may be folks here with us at City Hall that want to, that have a comment or feedback or opinions about this item. So this would be your opportunity, if you're here to talk about the resolution to adjust the parking fee schedule and hours, this would be your opportunity to do so. If you'd like to, just come on up to the podium and give us your name and address, and 3 minutes is yours to share with us any thoughts or comments you might have. Yeah. Good evening.
Hello, Mark McConnell, 22901 Woodward. I think congratulations. We've been here in this town for 20 years, and we've always talked about a structure, and here we go. So a hand clap for that, thank you. I wish we would have adjusted the rate sooner, right here at the 11th hour, but here we are. My biggest point of contention is picking and choosing when we're charging. I believe that it's fundamentally discriminatory to charge the late night people versus the day people. Either we charge 24 hours a day or we don't charge at all. I don't think we should be picking winners and losers of who realize the benefit of paying for parking or not. So, thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, come on up. Good evening.
Hello, how you
Hi.
doing?
Good.
My name's Mike. I live on Academy Street.
Hi, Mike.
I worked for a couple bars downtown in Ferndale. I work currently for Royal Oak in downtown at a bar.
Oh,
So that's kind of why I'm here. I do disagree with the rate increase more of the time than anything else. Royal Oak is certainly not an example to follow with anything when it comes to city government. They've made terrible mistakes and our businesses have suffered enormously because of it. I'm down about 40% personally in tips and other things. I don't think this is a good idea, but what I'm more upset about at this point is the way that this was all handled. We knew this vote was coming. You guys knew about this for years. We've been planning and talking about this for years. The city government of Ferndale normally talks to us about things that are going on. We sit down and discuss as a community. We don't just announce it a night before a snowstorm. We don't announce it a night before it's posted on Facebook that the next day is going to be a vote. This is not the way we're supposed to handle business in Ferndale, and it never has been. So that's been my big disappointment. That's why I live here. I live here because it's easier to get around. People come here because it's easier to park. It's cheaper to park. Royal Oak is losing business to us. You will change that. We should never compare ourselves to Royal Oak. We should never say, hey, they're doing it, so should we. And I just don't think it's a good idea. I think the businesses will decline, the businesses will suffer, and we should have never started a project that we didn't fund or pay for. Most of the residents of Ferndale thought this was bought and paid for. Some of us knew a little bit better. We knew this rate increase was coming. I think a lot of people were surprised by it, and I don't think that's a way to conduct government. And I think in the future, you guys need to convey those more often. We should have known about this years ago. No, thank you.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, come on up. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Hi, John Murray, Modern Natural Baby owner, also a resident of Ferndale. First of all, watching this, great job, Joe. I thought he did an amazing job. I came here like, all right, I'm going at it, and I understand it has to be paid for. Having said that, we just had our best year, and now what we're doing is we're moving into an area where we're probably going to have our worst year in 5 years, right? We're looking, all right, we've been waiting for this year. So when you throw a 100% increase at us right now, right, we're gearing up to like, all right, how are we going to make us profitable? And then you throw a 100% increase at us, we're a little like, wow. Having said that, how it's compared to others, it was a little easier to take. But I want you to look at it from our side, right? We're really, we're successful businesses now that we have to change our plan because something big's happening. A few things that I'm wondering about is the $20 employee. You say that as it's an advantage, but in my mind I'm wondering, is that a disadvantage or an advantage? Because right now we have a back parking spot where employees can actually go there, right? And they can park. But I'm like, why would we want all of our employees parking in our parking spots, right? As owners, we would rather have a dedicated parking spot. So why can't we get money that way, right? Why can't we go and say, all right, instead of let's not have any employee parking in the back lot, and instead have an area for employees to go, right? Because really what we're trying to do is make sure the visitors have a place to park, which I feel is going to be a problem. But I'm just saying, I don't know if that's a positive. So when they spin it as a positive, I'm looking, what's a reasoning here? Are we trying to find parking spots for employees and premier parking spots, right? So that's one thing. I'm excited. We're ready for it. I know it's tough, but I think 100% is a little bit high. Also, I know we're talking about hours. I don't know, you're taking 3 hours away. Why don't you give us 12 to 12 instead of 11 to, I don't understand why you're doing 11 to 12. Why don't you just make it 12 to 12 if you're trying to get more daytime business? So that's just something where I don't see that there's a lot of visitors coming to see from 11 to 12. So why don't we go from noon to midnight? Or noon to 11, right? I mean, just maybe make that a little bit a shorter time. I'm on your side. I see everything that you have to do, but I'm just saying, can you wait on this a little bit? 100% increase right away when we're just trying to get our bearings and trying to make sure we stay in business, right?
Yeah.
Having said that, we just renewed for 7 years, and we can't say enough great things about the city of Ferndale. Thank you.
If I can, through the chair, John, before you go.
Yeah.
First off, love your business, although I have no babies, but you're truly successful. I want to just clarification on your statement about employee parking. Would your preference be to move them out of that, in your case, Withington lot altogether and put them off-site somewhere?
Yeah, my thing is that right now, what's happening is we're closing the Troy lot.
Yeah.
So what's happening is employees that are on the Withington lot are using that, right?
Oh, correct, yeah.
People from Detroit are now using that Withington lot as well. So basically, we have the whole line at 10 o'clock already filled up, 10 a.m. already filled up with just employees. What I'm saying is we have to figure out what that solution is, right? We have to figure the solution on not putting employees in the Withington lot.
Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify.
Over to the side, maybe. I mean, we have to have a dedicated spot, but I'm saying that we have less parking spaces. So we need to make sure that to stay in business, that we actually have parking spaces for our guests.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I followed you.
Thanks, John.
John, I do have a clarification question as well.
Oh,
Sure.
There you go.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Nice.
You mentioned something about the $20 permit parking for employees. Were you proposing something or?
The last thing I want to do is increase employee parking and say that was John Murray's idea.
No. I'm just asking what you're proposing.
Really, my idea is employee parking in spots that matter. If we got rid of that employee parking, then that's not so much an issue, right? I want my employees to we pay for employee parking right now, and we'll continue, but it's one of those things where we're like, I don't want my employees actually parking on parking spots that my guests could be in.
You're advocating for a separate area that's dedicated to.
Separate area that's dedicated. It's going to be a problem. It's a problem right now in January, and it's been a problem with negative 20-degree temperatures, right? I can only imagine when we're in June and it's hopping, right? That's 40 guests that's coming into the city that we've taken a parking spot from.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for your patience.
Hi, my name's Brad Bowen. I am a new resident to Ferndale. I actually just moved on to Chesterfield. And,
Welcome.
thank you. I've been in the entertainment industry for a long time. Started, in bands and all that stuff, and now I'm working on like DJ and karaoke services and things of that nature. I've been employed up at Pronto, right off of there, right off of Washington and Royal Oak for a long time, and watched a lot of the different, you get to watch the nightlife and the adjustments to certain things around you. When I was a young kid and I went out to Royal Oak, we walked around, hung out on 4th Street and did random things. We didn't think about parking as an issue. And you notice that over time, as you get older, you start going out to nightlife and you start experiencing things, alcohol and doing those things, social things, whatever, bands, things of that nature. And you start to, you don't really conceptually think about like how parking affects that until you get your first parking ticket, right? And then, moving on from that point, you depending on your social economic status, it will affect you in a certain way to go out to that bar or that area again, depending on how often something like that happens. And I'm noticing as a self-employed, person who works in both now Ferndale and Royal Oak, that I can tell you just looking at it from a nightlife, it's going to affect it in a long-term fashion, not an immediate result to help pay for things. I can definitely see why a city would want something like that to help with an increase in rate. My suggestion personally is your timeline. I could see 11 o'clock being a better thing, or 10 even so. You guys are at 9, you've been there, that's a great thing. I think that's been a good attribute for Ferndale in itself and its nightlife business. And I feel that if you go to midnight, you're gonna see a huge hit long-term. Meaning these businesses and these people that are here representing that, they're going to be seeing their night, they're going to have to close early, and to some of the bartenders and things of that nature, you can see that in Royal Oak already happening. Restaurants closing early, Hot Cap, brand new place, closing at 10 o'clock on a Wednesday. It just doesn't make sense to me. I'm in Wednesday in Royal Oak until 2 a.m. and I have 15 people in my bar and have had that for a while. And it's not... this is the kind of impact that it's weird to say to connect the parking to that, but
if you're trying to even get younger generation to come out and participate in any kind of social event in that way, you're asking them to, run that thing, and they see the meter, they're like 12, maybe some of them will risk it, depending on their, their abilities and work and ethic and things of that nature. But, long-term and just trying to keep, sustainability and a scene in your city, a vibe, a welcoming vibe. That's a part, I think, that's been something about Ferndale. It's a little more welcoming in that regard. Detroit doesn't even go too late downtown. So, I mean, it's all about what you're trying to do to increase and keep, things happening at a time. And parking can affect that, I think, personally. And that's all I got for my time. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Good evening.
Hello, Tolly, 205 West 9 Mile. So for us right now, the biggest concern is parking. I mean, I can already tell you afternoon business has definitely taken a hit. We're just a bar. We don't have any food. So people stopping in for a beer after work, that's not really a thing anymore. I mean, if you're going to spend 20, 30 minutes looking for a parking spot, it's not really convenient. So for us, we've already felt an impact. I think with the new rates that you're discussing, I mean, for us, after 9 o'clock, that's our crowd. Those are the people who come. I'm not sure, it's going to impact us no matter what we say. People are going to look for other places with parking lots and things like that. So I think this rate of enforcement, the time of enforcement and the rate increase right now, while we're already feeling the squeeze of less spots. And I'll be honest, convenience is number one. People that don't want to stop and look, they're not going to come. So once again, I'm not really a big fan of the transparency of this. Very late in the game for you guys to bring this to the board, and I'm not a fan of what's happening and the timing of it. So.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address council?
Hi, I'm Ben Butoff. Oh, hello. I'm on Highland Street. I'd just like to piggyback a little on what Tolly said. A lot of their businesses, people just coming in for a beer after work, and the gentleman here with his big presentation here conveniently left out that communities like Royal Oak, in the parking structures, they're waiving the first 2 hours. So that's beneficial to businesses like his. I'm also against this hike at the time. Like others have said, I just feel the timing is bad. You could have been a lot more transparent. It's going to be on camera. Yeah, and just convenience is a big deal. Just by a show of hands, how many of you parked in the lot for this building tonight? I'm pretty sure everybody. So I am for the third plan, I guess. Just deferring until the time is right. We're already hurting with less spots. It's kind of a insult to injury to have less spots and also be paying more at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right. I will open it up to council's comments, questions. Anybody have any questions or comments of Joe or in general?
Joe, can you talk a little bit, I know in calculating your recommendation and solution, you looked at a bunch of different variables and what the cost benefit of those variables are. Can you walk through some of those just at a high level models that you took a look at to see what the other alternatives are? Because I think they're what some have already thought of too, but I want to make sure we're clear we considered a lot of that.
Let's start with parking rates, because we'll separate the enforcement and the rates. So starting with rates, we wanted to look at a myriad of options. We looked at 75 cents an hour, $1 an hour, and $1.25 an hour. And we studied what those revenues project out as based on the current information that we have. So to start all this off, we did an actual parking traffic study. From that parking traffic study, you get some general calculations that are parking industry specific. And then from that, you can project out the impact of these different rates based on that information. And so it's 75 cents an hour, which is the first one we looked at. We would go into deficits for the first 8 years, which really risks the general fund, the tax base. So then in the cases where that happens, the parking system couldn't pay that debt, and then that debt burden would be passed on to the taxpayers. As a community, we have to guarantee that service. So that ostensibly got rid of 75 cents an hour. Then we looked at $1 and $1.25. And $1.25 certainly puts us in a healthy situation, but we felt that if we can meet the debt service and meet all of our operating requirements with a lower rate, that we would recommend that. And so that is why we have chosen to recommend that. And so to balance our goals
To be
for.
clear, you recommended the dollar, not the $1.25.
Correct, yeah,
Okay.
to be clear, yeah. That's why we chose not to do, the $1.25 is, of course, more conservative fiscally, but we thought we could achieve the same goal of protecting the general fund with $1. And that would also, on the other hand, allow us to still be pretty competitive in terms of parking rate in the region. And so that's how we got to $1.
And to be clear, we also had conversations about more concentric levels of parking at different times, right? We've talked about charging different rates at different lots.
Yeah, that's correct. We've talked about charging lower rates in outer lots. So this is considered an outer lot, for example. West Breckenridge and East Breckenridge would be considered outer lots. Inner lots are really, to John's point, is where there's a lot of activity, and our goal is to turn over that traffic. And one of the mechanisms to turning over that traffic would be to make it, incentivize people to park out here by making it cheaper. And so that is something we looked at, and so that what that could look like is having a lower rate than $1 in the outer lots, and that would be 50 cents or 75 cents an hour. And that would be achieving that goal.
And if I may, through the chair, that is something that you are recommending after the deck is built, if I'm reading this meter hours and fine rates in the packet. It says that that Ann Arbor does it, and that's something that we would look at after the deck would be built. Is that correct?
So concentric rates are considered best practice now, and so we take that to heart because parking is really ultimately about influencing behavior, consumer behavior, and that's just a market mechanism to influence people to go out and then take advantage of our walkable downtown. And so, yeah, we would be open to that. That would be consistent with best practice.
The current one on the table is
Yes,
not
same.
concentric.
Or
but-
now is single
Right.
rate.
Same rate across every lot,
Right.
right? And
Joe-
all at the same time.
Yes, that's
So
the
then,
current
Joe, is it
recommendation.
fair to say, I mean, the bottom line with this rate increase and the hours extension is that we have to pay the debt of the deck. So is it fair to say that if we did, as some folks suggested, which is reduce the hours into the evening that we enforced parking, that there'd have to be an increase over $1 to make up the difference to pay the debt?
Yeah, that's a fair statement. So one thing by attacking a revenue problem by looking at rates and enforcement hours is that it really helps you suppress that rate. So if you keep it at $1 an hour, but then also look at extending enforcement hours, that's another revenue opportunity. And both of those two pieces go towards the debt service.
All under the assumption we're protecting the general fund.
All under the assumption we're protecting the
Right.
general.
That's right.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah, because I've challenged you from the beginning of this discussion of why can't we, the morning is such a light time, why can't we move that, from noon to 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock, just to encourage those early morning foot traffic? But you have showed me your projections and the revenue that we would lose in doing that, which would necessitate us either extending the hours more into the evening or raising the rates higher than $1. We could do that, I suppose. You could make the rates $1.50 and continue to keep them at 9 o'clock. So that's the balance that this is. This is more of an art than a science, I guess.
Absolutely.
But I will say this, to the point that you just made, and you made it a number of times, but I'm going to also just be very clear about this. From the very beginning, the line in the sand for me was that taxpayers of Ferndale are not going to be on the hook for the parking deck, that the parking deck has to be supported by the users of the deck. They may be residents of Ferndale who drive downtown, but they might not. And if you're a resident of Ferndale who doesn't drive downtown and park downtown, you shouldn't be expected to pay for the deck. So the dot, I should say. So the dot has to be paid for by the users. So it's a balance, and I know that you and others have, and the parking folks have spent many hours balancing the amount, the hours, and I know this is your recommendation, and So I just want to be clear that there's trade-offs. I want to make people understand that there's trade-offs to these hours, and that would, in this case, be higher rates.
Yeah, that's accurate.
Through the chair.
Yeah.
I do want to address the comment about transparency. I hear you. I think everybody on council hears that as well as the city, and that we could have done a better job of showing how integrative the rates were and making this project get off the ground and to the groundbreaking. So I hear you on that. And I think we're all really understanding and very clear about the inconvenience construction has on our businesses. And we're doing everything in our power as a municipal government and the DDA to support the businesses through this transition of 15 months. But I also sort of want to say about, it is a public investment that requires a market use. So, right? So we're using public money to bring this benefit to our downtown, which wouldn't happen with just private investment dollars. There's no developer out there saying, I want to build you a $20 deck with my own private money. And if we did that, we would be giving away our control over managing our public parking to private market-based pricing of parking. So at the end of the day, we are controlling the pricing of our parking, and I feel like we're in a stronger, more strategic position as a community when we do that, even though we need to increase rates in order to pay off this bond. And so what I take out of it is that everybody, with our transparency going forward, is that everybody can see what our parking fees are being invested in for the downtown's behalf, for the business's behalf, for the visitors and the residents who utilize and enjoy our downtown. That you are seeing that we're investing in our sidewalks and our streets because that's what's happening with the public money for the DOT is just specific for the parking deck. But the city is doing these wraparound investments as well of making the sidewalks better and making the street better in front of the street. So to me, we're having a broader investment into our downtown that I think is going to have a stronger impact after it's completed. And so I just wanted to say and acknowledge, I hear you, business owners, about the transparency, and I'm hoping that all the businesses are participating in the resources and programming that the DDA is offering and that the city is offering to make sure that you not only that you sustain and thrive throughout this next 15 months.
Your Honor, as we drift into discussion, may I put a motion on the table and then I have a comment?
Of course.
I would move that we adopt the resolution in the packet that reads the City of Ferndale will issue a $20 million in capital improvement debt to be paid for by the proceeds from the auto parking fund. And the City of Ferndale and DDA support the following adjustments to the paid parking fee schedule, and the implementation of the rate adjustments provides a level of security towards the debt service repayment for the capital of improvement funds. And it goes on to read, but it's the approval of the recommendation, be it resolved, that the hourly meter rates are $1 per hour on-street and $1 per hour off-street, with the hours of enforcement from 11 a.m. to midnight, Monday through Saturday. For discussion.
Is there support?
Support.
All right,
Moved
so
by
if I may-
Martin and supported by Piana. All right, now discussion.
I think it's really ironic I made the motion because I'll be honest with you, for 2 years, I've been probably the most outspoken, adamantly opposed to any rate increase tied to this project. Joe knows I've bent him over the coals, I don't know how many times about it. But I think, Joe, you've done a good job laying this out today, and here's kind of where I land with it now. I agree with Councilwoman Piana. I hear the businesses. I think the timing that we essentially were forced upon us stinks, and I would have rather done it a long time. But 7 years ago, when I ran for council, the first thing everybody said is we need a parking deck. We've been working on this for 5 years already. Here we are 7 years later, and we need a parking deck. And that's not that it should come at all costs, but this is a really intriguing investment with public access for exactly the reasons that Councilwoman Piana says. If we leave this to the private market, if it gets built at all, it would certainly be at a higher rate, even with the adjusted rates. Also, tantamount to that is protecting the general fund. I agree with the mayor. In no way should this burden fall back on the core taxpayers. If they use the deck, yes, but it should be the users of the parking system that pay for this. And having coupled with what will be a gift of 20,000 square feet of office and daytime traffic in the downtown. That is desperately needed for our businesses, and I hear that a lot as well. It counterbalances at least some of the pain I know the next 18 months is going to bring. And I know it's going to be painful. And I'm right there in lockstep with you, and we'll continue to shop local and be as supportive, I think we all will, as we can be in that scenario. And I encourage everyone to do that to help get our businesses through it. But the parking fund needs to protect the general fund from the debt service and it leaking over into the general fund. I think this rate increase, while regrettable, and again, I've been against this for a while, puts us in a position in a market space that's still on the low end. We're in place. The percentage of increase double sounds big, but honestly, in the scale of what's going on in the marketplace, we're still very much on the low end of this. I don't like it, but I agree that it's necessary and for the greater community good. Businesses and residents and visitors included. So I'll be voting in support of this tonight. And Joe, I want to thank you for all your hard work on this. It's really quite commendable.
Councilwoman Leaks May.
So I do have a comment regarding the proposal tonight. It seems as if for as long as I've been on council, I've been hearing comparisons about being like Royal Oak. And I don't think that we're anything like Royal Oak. We're completely different, in my opinion. I've been to Royal Oak many times, and I see the differences. The fact that our parking rate has been what it's been for so long is, I think, is commendable for what we've been trying to maintain a status quo for our community and make it affordable for our residents and trying to make it support our businesses. Going up to the parking, increasing the parking and the hours, I've since learned are necessary in order to sustain and be able to show good faith for the bond that we would like to show good faith that we're able to pay it back. The way I've kind of compared it to is that if you were going out for a loan, you would have to show collateral, and you'd have to show that in good faith that you're able to pay this back. And what I don't want to see is this falling on the taxpayers of the community, and I don't want to see the businesses hurt either. So I hope that we are continuing on our course to support these businesses so they can get through these the upcoming 15 months. I know that I will continue to support local. I'm glad that the DDA has made those activities and just ways in which to support the businesses and encourage voters and encourage individuals in the community, outside of the community, to continue to vote, to support local businesses. At first I thought, I've heard so many proposals as far as what to, so many proposals as to what if we didn't extend the hours, or what if we made the hours a little bit later in the mornings and the afternoons, or a little bit earlier. And Joe, I've heard your proposals. I've many meetings, many discussions. You guys put a lot of work into it. And as much as I don't like it either, I support this because we have to, I want to get this deck built. I want to see our businesses supported. And it's just something that we have to kind of bite the bullet and do. $1, I don't, in my heart, I don't believe that it's going to affect our evening businesses. When I'm downtown, these businesses are hopping, so I don't think it will. I think in the long run it will sustain. I think right now businesses are kind of concerned because of what they think is going to happen, but we don't know that. And so I'm in support of the increase, the hours, and I'm also in support of supporting our businesses. So.
If I may add to that too, I wanted to point out the City Council did approve out of the parking budget support for business services that started this weekend with the first real weekend of under construction. So one of those is free downtown valet during peak hours right now to start, and that's Fridays and Saturdays between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. I actually received a report from Star Tracks, who's our local vendor, and it sounds like we parked 70 cars this weekend on opening weekend, and that's pretty good for an opening weekend. We expect word of mouth, and he's already asking for more resources because people are very happy with it. So that's one thing. And the parking fund is subsidizing that, so that's coming at no cost to the businesses, is an effort that we're trying to make towards mitigation during construction. And concerning downtown employees, the Ferndale DDA has partnered with Lyft to provide ride sharing for downtown employees to help them get to work downtown. And what that does is that allows them to leave their car at home and not take up the downtown space. That kind of gets at, I think, what the goal is in terms of providing other locations for downtown employees. So Barry Hicks and the DDA can certainly comment more on that. That's their program, but it's a great idea, and it sounds like that was well received from him based on the reports. And we've also secured the leasing of the Ferndale First United Methodist Church, and that's also being paid for out of the auto parking fund. And that's going to be a free lot. It's about 70 spaces. And that, again, is Thursday night and Friday night from 4 p.m. till midnight, and then Saturday from all day till noon till midnight. And those are all posted on parkferndale.com. I encourage any business or any guest or any residents to go there. We recognize that this is disruption and it's difficult, but those are some of the initiatives we're trying to do to help offset it the best we can.
Through the chair also, if I may, I heard Councilman Martin mention the parking rates for, I think it was Monday through Saturday. Were there different rates for Sunday? I'm not clear.
Sunday remains free parking.
Remains free. Okay. All right. Okay, so it remains free.
And
are there any sort of promotions regarding? I've heard the question regarding the coupons. People say they've not even heard of the coupons and don't even know anything about them. Are there any promotions to make this a little bit easier to?
Aside from the services that I noted, we're really encouraging the use of the Park Ferndale mobile app. A lot of businesses and guests have said that that's been very popular, and that gets people out of having to go to the kiosk and actually pay at the kiosk. You can just pay on your smartphone if you have it, and if it's available to you. Another thing we offer is a merchant validation program. So businesses who'd like to can actually prepay parking and give out codes to their guests. And what that does is allow them to essentially pay for the parking of their guests in advance. So the guest comes in with a mobile payment, and then you give them a code, and that just changes the processing fee, and then the business ultimately subsidizes. And that's a promotional opportunity. We have a few businesses doing that, and that was actually borrowed from downtown Detroit. They were using that for their businesses under construction as well.
I know, but that doesn't really answer my question. So are there any discounts for the residents and the people who are actually going to be doing the parking? I get that it's promotions for the businesses, but are there any sort of promotions for any reason? Are there any sort of promotions for the?
We haven't factored any programming in terms of that special promotional programming, but we are open to continue to work through that. Yeah.
If I may?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Polika.
First, I want to thank all the residents, business owners, employees, and visitors who reached out to me over the past week with their concerns regarding the proposed increases in parking rates and hours. I understand and appreciate your opinions and points of view regarding how this proposed change will affect you and everyone who uses our parking system. Everyone who uses our parking system for different reasons at different times of day. And while 50 cents an hour might not seem much for people who visit our town, it could be $5 to $15 a week, which could, for people who use it 2 to 3 days a week up to midnight, that could be $20 to $60 a month, or well over $200 a year for the frequent visitor. For someone on a fixed income, that is a huge impact to your spending ability. That reality is not lost upon myself or my fellow council members.
this was not a change that we are proposing cavalierly. As you saw from Assistant City Manager's presentation, it is a change necessary to be able to move forward with the project. As I mentioned earlier, I spoke with several people over the past week about alternative options to reach the level of funding necessary to cover the bond costs. Some were creative, but unfortunately not viable, and some were very realistic and reasonable that required further investigation. In the end, this plan appears to be the best alternative. That being said, this morning, on my way to work, I called Joe and said, you know, what are some other alternatives? Is there any way we can tweak this? And I suggested originally, maybe Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we keep it at 50 cents. And through those conversations, you offered another alternative, which was the concentric parking and possibly making the outer lots of East and West Breckenridge and the city lot 50 cents, and the remaining lots at $1. And in that conversation, I know that that is the plan after the deck is opened up, but is that a possibility for us to consider tonight?
Yeah, and so I did some financial analysis on that. I made some adjustments based on the revenue information that we have on these decks, these lots right now. And it looks like it would be feasible to maintain a 50-cent rate or a 75-cent rate in the outer lots. I'd like a little bit more time to assure the analysis, but based on initial look and initial consult with our finance director, it looks like we would be in good shape for just those 3 lots, the outer lots.
Is it, and I would have to ask our city attorney, is it possible to adjust the language to say for those 3 outer lots, the increase will be up to $1, and that would allow our flexibility to charge either 50 cents or 75 cents for those outer lots?
May I, through the chair?
Yes.
Or do you want your answer first?
Yeah.
Yes.
But through the chair, I think, Councilman, that's something that could be done. It's something that you could direct that range of possible rate to be studied and determined by, for example, the city manager's office, if you wish to proceed and incorporate that possible tweak into the proposed resolution.
Councilman Martin.
As the maker of the motion, I wouldn't be in support of that, and I'll tell you why. I'm not opposed to it conceptually, but there's a lot of work and analysis that's gone in, and by all means, go calculate and crunch the numbers, but we have some time before this goes into effect. Bring the analysis back here, and then I'll adjust the rates. At that point, if it pans out, we meet the debt service by doing that.
Okay, so I have a question for Joe. With the motion being made tonight, how difficult is it going to be for us to revisit the concentric parking after the deck opens to adjust those rates based on the existing bond debt once it's established?
So the one thing with the fees and rates for any service that we offer, it's revisited every year during the budget process. So we could certainly revisit that again at this time next year and make the appropriate adjustment based on the actual
Through the
numbers.
chair, there are no timeframes on this resolution, so we theoretically could revisit it at any time, correct?
Yeah, I think the bond market specifically just wants to see that the revenues are in hand before the issuance, so.
I agree,
But,
which is why
yes.
I would want it to come back here before we make
Correct.
changes.
Just like, yes, it would be treated just like any fee. Council has that right.
Right. Yeah, so if I may, just to summarize, if there are changes, we still have to prove to our bond friends that we can still pay off the bond, and that we're not putting it into the general fund. So what I'm hearing is that your suggestion can be looked at, but at the end of the day, it cannot still impact the general fund or upset our bond friends from saying there's something now wrong with your revenue stream, right?
Yes, and I understand that.
Okay.
But if we vote what is being proposed today, we really can't look at that then for a period of time. Whereas if we vote with the language of up to $1, we wouldn't have to revisit this.
We can revisit it anytime we wanted to. There's nothing stopping us from revisiting it a month from now, before the changes go into effect, if the numbers bear out. I'm saying it's incumbent on this body to be responsible to make sure we're meeting our financial obligation.
Completely
Through
understand
the
that.
chair, as I understand it, the proposed bond sale may be later this month. So this is a proposed resolution to provide certainty and a level of comfort for those proposed purchasers of those bonds.
That would be accurate. I think one thing we're mindful too is also providing
don't have
ample time to communicate effectively to the businesses and guests.
Yeah.
So setting expectations.
Okay.
Again, I'm not opposed to it. I want solid evidence that we meet our obligations.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm sorry, Matt.
go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
I understand. I guess my concern is then how does it look to the bond people if we're going to look at it again in a month or 2 months? I think they want some stability. They want to know that we're looking at this with certainty.
I would suggest it looks like there's a governing body that takes its responsibilities seriously and meets its obligations.
We do have our bond advisors in the audience today. They'd be more than happy to.
If I'm making a mountain out of a molehill, let me know. I love the idea. I'm not knocking the idea. I just.
My name is Bobby Benzinski. I'm president of Benzinski and Company. We've been the city's municipal advisor since I had dark hair. So, we will have to tell bondholders and potential investors the rates that are in place. The city's full faith and credit will be backing these bonds.
Right.
However, when you have a $1.1 to $1.2 million annual debt service obligation to hit the general fund of the city of this size and your general fund budget, it is very material amount. So for you to say that we're going to put these rates in effect now, look at them at a later point, could impede or infect the rate of interest that you pay in the bonds. Therefore, you could pay a higher rate. Yes, your city attorney is absolutely correct. You could adopt this resolution tonight at your next city council meeting. You could withdraw this resolution. But we will have to put together a prospectus or an official statement, as it is called in the municipal world, that's going to talk about the rates. We're going to have to show some pro forma statements as to the rates that are in place, the projections, the assumptions that are all used in all of these. And you are subject to federal securities rules and regulations. And we can't say that we're going to do this, wink, wink, we might not do it. No, you can't do that. You are in the federal securities laws, and you are subject to those rules and regulations, as we are, as your municipal advisor. And if we know that you are playing games with rates, we have an obligation to say, we can't market this deal.
All right.
I promise I won't play games with the rates.
I won't
So it
be
sounds
either
like-
at all what I'm saying, but.
It
yeah.
sounds like we should stick to the recommendation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Through the chair, I have another question for Joe, unrelated to the amount of rates, but more of a service to offset the inconvenience of having more difficult to park. Can you talk a little bit about, we had a contract with Ford Chariot about our rideshare service, and we all want you to know that we were very surprised when Ford Chariot announced that they were discontinuing their whole business while we were in contract with them. So we found out via the news, like everybody else. And so can you talk about, A, what's happening to our contract, and B, what other type of service is there out there that we're looking at that it may not be ready to be deployed, but is there anything else out there equivalent that could be a solution for our businesses in the downtown?
Yeah, a couple comments on that. First, shuttle service requests at the beginning of this project were one of the most preferred options expressed to us by most businesses during feedback sessions. So we actually went out to bid and requested assistance for shuttle operations. The trick was, or the problem was that all of them wanted the city to manage the dispatch and manage all of the personnel. And at the end of the day, the city's just not in the transportation business, so we couldn't absorb that operation. So that is when we found Chariot. And what made Chariot excellent is they agreed to manage all the personnel, manage the dispatch, manage the entire operation for a monthly fee. And the purpose of Chariot was to connect guests towards outer lots that were free, such as the church lot that we mentioned, or to the Kulik Center, for example, which is publicly owned, and enable people to access free parking and then take the Chariot into downtown to enjoy their evening, and then you could take it back. Unfortunately, Chariot announced Ford's disinvestment in them a couple weeks ago, unfortunately without any notice to us, advance notice. So that agreement ceases, and we are currently looking for other shuttle options. That news of their discontinued investment actually did reach competitors. So a few businesses have reached out to us to express some interest in taking that business. We're having conversations yet, but we want to be clear on scope and what the city can and cannot do in terms of shuttle service.
All right, thank you.
Other comments or questions? I might also add one other thing that impacts the rates, and that is, and it also impacts this perception of trying to be like some other community, which we hear a lot and maybe are a little defensive to, because I certainly don't feel like I'm trying to be like anybody else but Ferndale, and this is a very unique and special place. Most of the decks that I see going up in other communities are pretty standard. They may be prefab, they may look a little nicer with some brick, but they're pretty standard decks. We made a decision early on, with a lot of input from the community, that we wanted something more special, something that reflected the character of Ferndale. So it's going to have first floor retail and commercial. It's going to activate the street on Troy with streetscape and all sorts of enhancements that will make that a vibrant street. It's going to have office component to bring in the daytime. It's not just a parking deck. That raised the cost of the project as well. We did that knowing that it would raise the cost of the project, because we're not trying to build a standard deck, which is what a lot of communities are doing. I think in the end this is going to be a really special project that is going to enhance, not change, but enhance and contribute to the unique character of our town. And for me, 50 cents an hour, an additional cost to satisfy a parking crisis that we've had in our community for many years, and also build something that we can be proud of, in the end is going to be worth what is admittedly going to be a very inconvenient 15 or so months. And I don't want to minimize that. And Joe, I appreciate all the ways that you and the DDA have worked to try to mitigate the inconvenience, but you can't eliminate it, and I understand that. But I think at the end, we're going to have something we can be proud of at a rate that we can afford and that our visitors can afford. And so I'm supportive of your recommendation.
And I may have one final statement, is that every time the city and the DDA jointly agreed to invest in improving our parking system, the discussion about rates has always come to the table. And we've always said, well, yeah, we may need it, but we don't think it's the right time. So for the last 7-8 years, we have said it's never the right time to raise rates. And I don't think there's ever a good time to raise rates. So, but we've sort of pushed it off for the last 8, and we haven't changed anything for 14. So, unfortunately, it's sort of at the same time of this deck, but it's sort of but for the parking deck, we wouldn't have to change the rates, and the rates but for the parking deck, right? Like they're happening at the same time because they need each other at the end of the day.
Other thoughts or comments? We have a motion and a support. So if there are no further comments, I would ask the city clerk to call the roll, please.
Councilmember Piana?
Yes.
Councilmember Leaks May?
Yes.
Councilmember Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pellica?
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That item is adopted. Moving on now to regular agenda item C, because as you recall, we moved B down in the agenda. So item C, because it is related, is the consideration of the general contract awards for the DOT as submitted, again, by our Assistant City Manager, Joe Gauschow.
Yeah, Council, we issued these in multiple phases. The second bid package was released in December, and we received results in January.
Yeah.
To be continued. Okay. So those results came back in, and this item is just a summary of bid package awards. There's a couple items that are noteworthy. One, all of the awards are going to union labor for every piece of the project. And number two, we did try to pitch local businesses about opportunities to bid on this process. Of course, since we're building it, we wanted to reinvest as much as we can into local business. I'm happy to say that Madison Heights Glass of Ferndale, it sounds tricky because that's their name, but they are in Ferndale, Michigan. They won the Glass Award, and that's actually $715,000 to be reinvested back in a Ferndale-owned business who's going to perform the work for us.
It's huge.
So that's the most noteworthy item. Again, approving these agreements, recommendations are part of the bond issue process. Again, as part of our due diligence.
So are there questions of clarification or a motion?
I move to approve the bid award recommendations valued in the amount of $11,036,347 to be paid from the auto parking fund.
Support. Moved by Piana, supported by Martin. Bet you've never made a motion for that much money before.
I know, I just stumbled on it.
Is there discussion, either by council or anyone here with us in the audience?
I just want to make a comment. I really appreciate you keeping an eye towards represented labor in this process.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And, yes, and our local folks. And Jordan, I know you had a big part of that as well. Made sure we reached out to all of the local businesses that were eligible to participate in this. And the fact that we have local Ferndale businesses that are going to be contributing to this is huge. And it gets to your point, Councilwoman Piana, about having the control of the project versus giving it away to a private developer who's just going to give it to the, whoever they choose. But this is money that'll get reinvested back in our community. So it's huge. So thank you. Are there other comments or questions?
Final comment is, I just wanted to say how structured your approach and process was for finding the right contractors and how transparent and open it was as well. So, really appreciate that.
All right. Marty, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Leaks May?
Yes.
Councilmember Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Polika?
Yes.
Councilmember Piana?
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That item is adopted. The next item of business, speaking of big numbers, the consideration of the resolution to issue $20 million in capital improvement bonds to support the construction of the DOT. Are there questions? Well, Joe, do you want to introduce that item?
Yes. I think my pathway's clear now to do that.
Oh, this is.
And Barry as well?
So
Yeah.
this is the next step. So this is the city's official declaration of intent to actually issue the bonds that we've been discussing. And we do have our bond counsel here with us tonight who can talk about that memo.
Yes. Could you, if you don't mind, gentlemen, introduce this item?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is Steve Mann. I'm a bond attorney with Miller Canfield in Detroit. You have before you a resolution which would authorize the issuance of up to $20 million to pay for the DOT, parking structure, streetscape, and ancillary items. It's expected the bonds will be issued in two series, a taxable series and a tax-exempt series. And this resolution is anticipated to be the only action that you'll need to take, and it authorizes your city manager, assistant city manager, and director of finance the authorization to move forward with the selection of an underwriter to market the bonds to, and to authorize and negotiate the sale and conclude the issuance and delivery of the bonds. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Could you talk to us a little bit about the timeline?
Yeah, my understanding of the timeline is that the city in the next week or so, through its administrative staff, will select an underwriter, and then probably within the next 30 days, go to market to sell the bonds, and then a couple weeks later close. So you're looking at probably about a 45-day timeline.
Questions of clarification or a motion?
I'd like to make a motion.
All right.
I move that we authorize the issuance of bonds in the amount not to exceed $20 million to pay the cost of West Troy Street parking deck project.
Support.
AKA the DOT.
Moved by Polika and supported by Leaks May. Now, any comments, questions, discussion? Dan, do you have, I'm sorry, do you have a?
No, Your Honor, I just wanted to confirm with bond counsel that they're satisfied with the language of the motion.
Yes.
You did that through eye contact.
We knew there's a secret
And
lawyer.
he was.
I had to find it in this whole.
Well, since this is the third and last item related to the DOT, I would be remiss not to thank our partners in this project, which is the DDA. And so, Barry, come on, I don't know if you have anything to add at this point, but before I'll give you a chance to speak, I want to just embarrass you a little bit. And I see some of your board members here as well, Mindy Couples, and I appreciate everything that the DDA has done to be a partner in this. For years, since, before I was mayor, it was a dream of the DDA to increase the parking capacity downtown, but to do it in a way that didn't just offer parking, but added more. But when push came to shove and it was time to really put sharpen the pencils and try to figure out how to make this project work, you and your board stepped up in true partnership to help us do this. And so this isn't just the city and it's not just Joe. And so I want to extend my personal appreciation to you and your board and give you an opportunity to say anything that you'd like as well.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Yes, I just wanted to say a couple of things, and we are excited to, obviously, we know there's going to be the pain we've talked about in the interim while it's under construction, but we're hopeful for what this project is going to bring to downtown when it is complete. The DDA board, I just want to acknowledge their participation. They've set aside $100,000 out of their own budget, and I'm not sure many people realize that, to help with parking mitigation services in the interim. They just bought hundreds of lift codes that are been distributed now to several of the businesses downtown. We'll be supporting more at a later time as well, so that they can help get around and get their staff around. We were participating in the chariot services up until that went defunct, and we do plan on participating in future shuttle services and things like that as well that I'm working with Joe and other staff of the city on. So I want to acknowledge the DDA board's contribution in that manner, but also in the fact that they are contributing over the course of 20 years in the life of this bond about $2.2 million to help complete the streetscape and the structure, which also helps keep some of the other goals in line, such as the rates for parking as well as the rates of some of the leasable space that will be in that structure. So they're making a really huge contribution over a period of time, and they are dedicated to the success of this and being your partner in this. So thank you guys as well. Appreciate it. And thank you to my board that is here tonight.
Thank you, Barry. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad you gave the specific figures, because I'm not sure we could do this literally without the support of our DDA partners. And so for residents who don't always understand what the DDA is or what they do with the funds, they do a lot more than just the pretty flowers that we love hanging from the lampposts. They are a true financial partner in the infrastructure and success of our downtown. So, and this is a great example of it. Other comments or questions? All right, Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Polika?
Long time coming, yes.
Councilmember Piana?
Yes.
Councilmember Leaks May?
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Joe.
There's actually one more housekeeping item.
Yep.
That's just also part of the process, and that is approving the update, which is common to the AIA agreement.
Yes,
That's with
indeed.
Colasanti Construction. So every
Thank
time
you.
you issue bids and you
Yep.
get pricing, you have to adjust that.
Yeah.
And that's really this agreement, it's just the adjustment reflecting the bid process we just went into.
Yeah.
So there's a new guaranteed maximum price, and that's before you today. And with that, that is the final housekeeping item in order to get this project officially packed and ready to go.
Well, I'll make that motion.
All
tonight
right.
then. I move that we approve the attached standard form of agreement between the City of Ferndale and Colasanti Construction Services, construction manager as constructor, where the basis of payment is the cost of the work plus a fee with guaranteed maximum price, along with the attached general conditions as amended.
Support.
All right. Moved by Leaks May and supported by Polika. Any discussions, questions, comments? Marty, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Polika?
Yes.
Councilmember Piana?
Yes.
Councilmember Leaks May?
Yes.
Councilmember Martin?
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That item is adopted. Councilman Polika, did we move B to the end, or did we move it till now?
We moved it to now.
Okay, so then we'll go back to item B. Something much less sexy, consideration of a purchase order to Detroit Salt Company for bulk road salt.
I don't know, you're really gonna want that on Wednesday.
It may not be sexy, but it's really important, yes. So, yeah, do you want to introduce that item for us?
And I thought the cameras were for this.
You thought, I know.
Text my mom and tell her she probably want to see me on TV tonight. So appreciate that. But yeah, no, this is just for our kind of our yearly order of salt. So salt prices are set by the state. Each year they kind of go out to contract, and that's all your tonnage you're paying. What you're paying per ton's all set by the state, depending on your region, where you're at, and so on and so forth. So we have to do our yearly delivery, what we're estimating we're going to use the year prior. This year we did a pretty good guesstimate for 2,500 tons. It's kind of get what Mother Nature throws at you for the most part. And of that, we have to purchase up to 80% of that. One nice thing is we do have a large salt barn, so if we don't use as much as we would have liked to use during the winter, we just lower our seasonal or early delivery for the prior year and then just roll that into it. So this year, our seasonal salt's coming from Detroit Salt Company. That's $45.80 a ton. So we would like to issue a purchase order to them for $114,500. That would cover the cost of the entire 2,500 tons if we do choose to order that. Then just lets us order salt as needed to keep our stock up.
Very good. Any questions or comments?
I move to approve the purchase order of $114,500 to Detroit Salt Company for bulk road salt, and that expense be charged to the general fund inventory materials account listed number as listed.
Is there support? Support. Moved by Piana, supported by Leaks May. Now, any further questions, comments? Huh?
I said we'll be screaming for that on Wednesday.
Yes, we will.
Support.
All right, yep, it's an annual thing we do, so pretty standard. It's actually on the, just to remind people, it's on the regular agenda because of the amount, which is over
100,000.
100,000. Anything over $100,000 must be placed on the regular agenda so that we make sure to have conversation about that. So that's why it's here, even though it's a relatively routine item. But Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Piana?
Yes.
Councilmember Leaks May?
Yes.
Councilmember Martin? Mayor Pro Tem Polika?
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That item is adopted. Moving on now to the final regular agenda item, and that is the consideration to appoint Joseph Gauschow, Assistant City Manager, as our interim city manager. And April, do you want to introduce that item?
As you recall, I will be moving on from the city manager's position here at the end of the month, sadly. However, during that time when we are in the process of recruiting the new city manager, we do need an interim. And if you recall, when the city manager prior to me was here and they left, we had to hire an interim because we didn't have an assistant city manager at the time or an HR director. So given the fact that with the experience of Joe being here for 7 years as well and his role as assistant city manager, it would make sense to formally approve him, assuming council's approval, to the interim manager's position upon my departure on February 28th. So I think we wanted to put this on the regular agenda just to, this is kind of, it'll be at least 3 to 4 months before somebody's situated in that position, just due to between the recruitment and somebody else having to give notice or things of that nature. This isn't just a couple week gig here, so we want to make sure that we have somebody in that we can ensure that our staff knows who the interim is, as well as any of our partners that we work with as well, of who is going to be taking my place temporarily. So with that, I'll open it up for discussion.
All right, is there any questions of clarification or a motion?
I move to appoint Joe Gacho, Assistant City Manager, as interim city manager.
6 years later, you're asking?
effective March 1, 2019.
Support.
Until a permanent city manager has been selected and begin their employment with the city of Ferndale.
Support.
No, because I thought Mayor had said it with some kind of like a little flair there, and I'm like, that didn't sound right.
All right. Moved by Polika, supported by Martin. Is there any discussion on that item?
I guess I just wanted to say how awesome April is again, to say that we actually are able to hire or appoint within to an assistant manager position and having an HR director, because this is, again, my third go-around for hiring a city manager, and I have to tell you how relaxed I feel that we have Joe and that we have Dan, our HR director. It is a much more calming experience, know that we have great people in place to have a fantastic search process. So thank you for all of the succession planning. It's important, people.
Well, it is, because I remember the process of hiring April, and so we hired a wonderful man by the name of Mark Wallenweber, who does that sort of stuff. But honestly, by the time we sort of got him up to speed with what Ferndale's about and our issues, it was really, it was time to bid him adieu. So it is, I think, we're extremely fortunate to have someone who's up to speed on all of our issues, especially parking. And timely that parking is obviously, the construction phase is kicking off, but really the planning phases are now winding down. And so I anticipate that Joe will have a few more hours in the day to focus on other issues. And so appreciate your willingness to step into this role, Joe, and have complete confidence in your ability to perform it.
I would just add that, throughout the years, Joe, you've had to fill in for, in some instances, a substantial amount of time when April went on maternity leave. So this isn't a, unfamiliar role for you to have to take. So I'm glad we're in that position.
All right, if there's no other comments, Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Leaks May.
Yes.
Councilmember Martin.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Polika.
Yes.
Councilmember Piana.
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you, that item is adopted. Next item of business is call to council. So, Police Chief, anything for the good of the community this evening? Nothing else. How about DPW? Anything else from DPW for the good of the community? No. No. Parks and Recreation. I know we have at least one really cool event coming up, which is, well, I won't steal your thunder.
Good evening. We have our daddy-daughter dance that is coming up this Saturday. It will be at Ferndale High School from 6 p.m. until 8 p.m. Tickets are currently $15. They rose this past Saturday to account for some of the things that we're throwing into this year's event. And tickets are still available. Sign up online. We also have our park board meeting that'll be taking place this Wednesday at 6:30 at the Kohler Community Center. Cool.
All right, excellent. Anything from the Republic Parking? All right, please do.
Since I see at least one business representative here, I wanted to reach out that any businesses that are interested in doing the prepaid parking for guests, validations is another name for it. It is really pretty simple, and for those of you here, I have some samples for you to try out. $1 validations. You can meet me after.
Thank you. Good, thank you. Anything from HR this evening?
Happy to be here and nothing more than that.
All right. How about from finance? Oh.
Good evening. I actually have good news. Please don't make that face.
Right. You don't often get up. I
know. I just wanted to let you know that we have had one of our citizens take advantage of the furlough, not discount, but the furlough deferral that we've offered.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Yes. Right.
Thank you. And of course, now the government is back in operation, but it's.
Well, it's 2 weeks.
For
so
potentially,
I
for
think
another
we'll just
week.
kind of
So
keep an eye on it as whatever
thank
happens.
you. Well, that's great to hear. I'm happy to hear that. Thank you. That is, yes. Sorry to make that face. Jordan, anything from economic development this evening?
Nothing this evening.
All right. Kara, anything from communications and community engagement this evening?
I have one thing. We had a couple of snow emergencies over the last 2 weeks, and throughout, I had about 10 people contact me and say, why don't you have a text alert service? And we do. I'm really, that was a really easy thing. Joe implemented it as part of parkferndale.com, and so I just want to remind people that it's there. We're working on getting a broader one for the city's website as well. But for now, if you go to parkferndale.com and click under the resources for subscribe for alerts, you can be notified via text or email about anything that impacts parking, and that would include severe weather and snow emergencies. So it's a great resource, and we've had a bunch of additional residents take advantage of it, and we're going to make sure that people know more about it.
It's a great reminder. Thank you. Appreciate it. Soon to be interim city manager Joe Gaucho. Anything else for the good of the public?
Yeah, I'd like to just finish with a couple closing remarks. One, we had a wonderful groundbreaking ceremony to honor the beginning of the project this weekend. It was Saturday, and we had a pretty good turnout of a mixture of businesses and residents. I talked to both, so I thank you for taking the time to come down to see us, but I'd also like to thank everybody who really was critical in making it successful. Not only that event, just getting us across the finish line. So specifically our Public Works did an awesome job. They went over and above to help Saturday happen. So thank you to them, and thank you to Public Safety. Police and Fire have been consulting with us regarding safety. They've been in every focus group meeting. We had about a year of public engagement on this. So that goes for every department who has participated and helped this project get across the finish line. I say thank you. And again, closing remark on the DDA. Barry has been a great supporter of the project. They've been a great partner. The DDA Executive Committee and the DDA Board expended a lot of their time with us in December as we were going through these discussions, trying to figure out a pathway forward. And so I thank them for all their time and just being such a great partner on this project. And thank you to the Chamber. The Chamber also showed up to the groundbreaking and they participated, and that was wonderful to see them out there. We welcome their continued involvement, of course. And then concerning the interim, I want to thank Council and thank April for the opportunity and the consideration. Thank you for the opportunities and everything you've ever given me as a mentor. I appreciate it. You are the Jordan to my Pippin. You're the Thomas to my Dumars. So I thank you sincerely for the opportunity.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah. I'd like to bring back up that last resolution.
Marnie, anything from the city clerk's office this evening?
Can't match that.
Nope. All right. Anything from the city manager's office this evening?
No, just going back on the status of my recruitment. As you know, you approved the recruiter tonight. He's already started his homework. He's hoping actually to start the recruitment by the middle to third part of this month already. So we'll be moving that along and keeping council abreast of the process and things of that nature. But we're looking at, is it about 3 months out before the hiring process, but we'll make sure we keep the community informed and you informed of where we are with all of that. And once it's ready to post, share away on this awesome place to work. So we'll keep you posted as we continue on this process.
Good. Thank you. And just an announcement, I think, about scheduling. We are, because this meeting was originally going to happen last week.
Sorry, yes.
So it's going to, now it happened this week because of the weather. Are we meeting again next week?
We are. So we move back to our normal scheduled programming of the second and fourth Monday of each month.
Thanks.
Starting with another one next Monday. So see you all back here in a week.
All right. Thanks, April. Dan, anything?
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing tonight.
All right. Councilman Martin.
I just want to thank the city services and the folks that worked through the polar vortex. You guys did a great job as usual, and I'm really heartened to see, and the city's got a great heart, and I see this every time where neighbors are looking in on neighbors and helping out, disabled or elderly in our neighborhoods, and it always really touches me when that happens. And there's another opportunity Wednesday apparently with the ice, so just remember folks in your neighborhood, and we have a great community that does that, and it always makes me feel really good to be a part of it. So with that, I'll pass.
Can I make a comment on that? We also heard quite a bit that when people saw that the state had closed down, that they made an assumption that all government buildings were closed. So I just encourage you, if you need anything, to make sure you call City Hall. Don't assume it's closed. This Wednesday might be a little bit of a challenge, but just make sure you call ahead to, if you really need us, give us a call. But there was a misunderstanding that when federal government closed, or the state that the City Hall closed, or city as well, and that's not necessarily the case. Not always the case, but just make sure to call ahead.
So Councilwoman, if you don't mind, I see it's 1 minute that you have till you have to leave. So I'm going to skip to Councilwoman Piana in case you need to go catch a flight.
Thank you. And what I wanted to talk about is why I have to go catch my flight.
Okay.
Because I am just so honored that I get to be a cheerleader of Ferndale at the national level. Through the Michigan Municipal League, I've been invited to, they take in the MML president and the CEO every February to fly in to lobby our Congress people, and I'm just going to happen to be there during the State of the Union. But they added and invited me a day early to be on a panel for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce on America's infrastructure, time to invest. And so they're looking for communities to tell their story, the importance of why government needs to help invest in local infrastructure, since our federal government hasn't been doing a very good job in investing in cities. And so why it was so important for me to be here tonight and vote on the DOT project is I'm actually talking about the DOT project. Right. And so I actually will be sitting next to a municipal bond guy talking about the importance of public-private partnerships. And so tomorrow morning at 10:55, look on Twitter for the National League of Cities and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And I will be promoting our awesomeness, because the DOT project is not your vanilla-flavored parking deck. It is a very special flavor that I get to champion and promote. And so, again, thank you to Joe for setting me up for success for tomorrow. So,
excellent.
On that note,
Okay.
I gotta go to the airport.
Go catch a flight. Thank you.
Neapolitan.
All right. Thanks, Councilwoman. All right, Councilwoman Leaks May.
Oh, okay. Just,
Safe flight.
yes, safe flight. Just want to welcome Joe in his, well, not so new role. You've done it before, but I know you'll be great at it, and continue working forward with you.
Excellent. Mayor Pro Tem Polika.
Just want to echo Councilman Martin's comments about city services, DPW handling the variety of weather that we've had in the last week plus, and communications and making sure that the messages are always getting out on social media. And then the other thing is, last week I had my What's on Your Mind about Ferndale, and it was the coldest day of the week, Wednesday. I had one person come, met at the Emory, and had a wonderful conversation. 99% of it was about the DOT and the parking rates and all of that. So I'm glad that I kept that event happening. And my next one is going to be on Friday, February 22nd. At Dino's from 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. So a lunchtime session for people who might work in the evenings. Come and sit down, chat. Like I said, it's always very informal. I'm usually just sitting at a table or sitting at the bar. Just come up, have a seat, and we're just going to talk about stuff, whatever's on your mind.
Excellent. Thanks. Great. So I've talked plenty today. I don't have anything else. And so with that, we do have to go into closed session for a brief period of time to discuss an item. So I need a motion to go into closed session.
I'll move that City Council meet in closed session pursuant to MCL 15.268D to consider the purchase or lease of real property.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Is there discussion? Marnie, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Polika?
Yes.
Councilmember Leaks May?
Yes.
Mayor Polk?
Yes, thank you. We are in closed session. Thanks for coming, everyone.
We take a 5-minute break?
And we'll take a 5-minute break.
Greg, you're the
Sounds like a plan.